Just a century ago, Missouri stood on the edge of the modern world we know today. Big cities like St. Louis and Kansas City had enjoyed the benefits of Mr. Bell's invention for some time. And thanks to hundreds of dedicated and determined entrepreneurs across the state, Missouri's small towns and farms were being connected to the 20th century as well. But the early telephone pioneers had to dream big to succeed. Wire by wire, farm by farm, town by town, they created the robust communications network that drives our economy today. For the past century, our association has been proud to be part of Missouri's success story. Through struggles and sacrifices, small telephone companies grew with their communities. Recently, 3 senior members of multi-generation telephone company families gathered to reminisce on some of their early memories of growing up in the business.
My parents bought Stella in 1948, and I was barely 6 years old. And I did live with them, and I answered a switchboard, just like the one behind us here. But I had to sit on world books because I was very small. We did not have telephone poles. We had the old wire we would string on fence posts and trees because we couldn't afford it.
I can remember there was a little desk in the corner of this was actually in the living room, and a phone there, and there were lots of folks that didn't have phones at that time. They'd come in the house and make a long distance call.
The central office, so to speak, the operator's switchboard was the town central location, and the joys and individual families' trials and tribulations were all poured out there, and they were shared through the community, and family tragedies, accidents, health issues, all that came through Central.
And you ended up carrying messages for some of those bad events as well.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Our biggest challenge was that we had no money. So we did with what we had, and we would borrow from neighboring telephone companies something we needed. I know it just seemed like my parents could never get anywhere. We never had enough telephone customers, and that was a luxury back then. You were charged a luxury tax to have a telephone. So we're not in the luxury part of Missouri.
We borrowed stuff from neighbors, you know.
Yeah.
I can remember going to Mexico and actually going through Southwestern Bell's salvage, what they were throwing away. It was like Christmas to us.
Right, yeah.
And just to get along.
My grandparents, my mom and dad, my mom's parents, took their life savings and gave it to Mom and Dad to buy Stella because my grandfather thought this will someday make a good living.
These small companies were able to succeed by becoming a part of community life.
The telephone companies, particularly the community-based family-owned telephone companies, are a very integral part of the rural communities nationwide.
We participate in all community activities. We're probably one of the first spots that get looked to for donations.
Community life, of course, isn't without its challenges.
You wouldn't believe the things that people come in, and older people, there's a cat in the tree, could you bring the bucket truck? Grandma's got a new TV, could Dave come out and program their remote?
Yes.
A horse had died, and the farmer and the horse had not only died, but it had gone through some decay. And he dug a pit, cut the cable, realized he'd cut the cable, went ahead and drug this horse over, buried it in the pit, and hid his backhoe in a barn. So our repairman had to dig down in this hole, having no idea that there's a decaying dead horse in this hole, and work through those issues.
But in the end, these providers are proud to serve their customers.
I would immediately say that I think holding the family business together after 100 years is our greatest success, and that was accomplished through satisfying our customers, keeping up with technology, evolving, meeting all the challenges, still operating today. That's our greatest success.
It was a good life, and it still is.
As technology developed and regulation evolved, the very idea of what it meant to be a telephone company changed. Larry Doherty, Trip England, and Tom Young talked to MTIA President Rick Teltorst at the state capitol about how the industry adapted and thrived during tumultuous times.
You know, it seems 1996 was a very pivotal year for our industry, not only in the Missouri legislature, but in Congress as well. Larry, tell us about those days. What was that like?
Well, in 1996, the U.S. Congress made the first major revision to the Communications Act of 1934 by passing the Telecom Act of 96, which really removed the exclusive boundaries for the local exchange carriers. It opened up that local exchange market, and as a result, with the federal Congress taking that action, the state legislature had to follow suit. In the Missouri arena, the vehicle for the major legislative change was Senate Bill 507. I know you gentlemen will remember the tremendous amount of work that went into getting that law passed back in '96. So it really did change the landscape of Missouri telecommunications regulation, and quite frankly, we've been working ever since to try to keep up with the changes in the marketplace.
Trip, you've been involved in most of the legislative battles we've faced over the last 25 years. What highlights stand out to you?
Rick, I'd say it all started in 1987 with House Bill 360, which was probably the first piece of legislation in the state to recognize that the telecommunications market was unlike the electric, gas, water, and sewer businesses regulated by the Public Service Commission, that there was competition evolving and the laws needed to change. At that time, there was a great deal of debate between the industry on the one hand and consumer groups and regulators on the other hand as to how far they were willing to go to begin the deregulation process, if you will. It was carried forward in '96, as Larry mentioned, with the Telecommunications Act, and more recently, throughout the first part of this century, the legislature continues to make changes to the law to reflect the fact that competition is a very real force in our industry today.
Tom, aside from legislative changes, we know that changes in consumer behavior and technology really drive our business. What's the biggest change you've seen in our industry in serving your customers over the last 20 years?
Well, before this session, I was looking back, and it seems hard to believe that 25 years ago, we were just rolling out dial-up internet. And we've really come a long way. Of course, like all companies, we've got broadband out there. But I think, you know, the biggest challenge that we'll see going forward is remaining relevant. You know, people want mobility in these times, and you know, a landline company's got to do more than just provide landline telephone service. You've got to be in broadband, you've got to be in video, and you have to be in wireless in some fashion. So the biggest challenge I see going forward is remaining relevant with their customers.
Larry, you served our association at a time of real industry change, and I think we're at that time again. Any lessons from those days that we should remember today?
Well, I think the association has always been recognized as that body where we try to reach a consensus among the many different players, the many different facets of the broad telecommunications industry. And as you well know, Rick, the folks in this building, they want to try to have consensus where it's possible in order for them to be able to take action. And to the extent that the association can remain that organization that brings folks to the table, provides a forum to share ideas, try to reach consensus where it's possible, I think that will always serve both the association and its member companies very well.
Tom, carriers serving rural communities have always faced a tough challenge. What advice would you give your industry colleagues for success over the next 10 years?
Rick, I think there's three things that'll help rural ILECs going forward for the next 10 years. And I think one of them is that you need to get involved or stay involved in the regulatory and legislative process. Those folks in Washington and Jefferson City need us to tell our story so that they can put a face on the issues. So I think you have to do that. The other thing is I think you need to continue to evolve your network. I might be going out on a limb here saying that fiber future-proofs your network, but I really believe that. I think that any technology that we throw out there, fiber will be able to handle it. So I think you have to continue to work on your network. Finally, I think one of the most important things is to have a well-trained, enthusiastic workforce. To me, there's nothing more important than having your staff understand and be excited about what you're doing.
As MTIA celebrates its 100th anniversary, the telecommunications industry continues to grow and evolve, connecting businesses and communities in Missouri. The future appears bright, and the industry is committed to meeting challenges and providing the best service for their customers.
Well, over the next decade, I think you're going to see more competitive options for consumers. You're going to see all kinds of new technology being implemented as customers demand new services throughout the state. It's going to be implemented in both urban and rural areas. Just because you live in a rural area, you're still going to want the same services being offered in the urban areas.
I know the industry 10 years from now will look entirely different than what it looks today. I don't know the specifics as we sit here today, but we know the pace of change is rapidly escalating, and I anticipate that change will continue. What I anticipate is a much more interconnected world of connecting people, places, and things in ways that we can't even imagine as we sit here today.
As the industry evolves, members will continue to benefit from the one voice of MTIA.
One of the things that makes our job easier, especially when we're talking about rulemakings, is having stakeholder involvement and stakeholder input. We want to make sure that our rules make sense not only for the consumer but also for the industry. Our job is a balancing agency, so we need to take into account what the industry needs in order to be successful here in the state. We can do that much better when the stakeholders speak with a unified voice, when one group or one party can come to consensus among the different interests that they represent. Whether you're a rural landline telecommunications provider or you are one of the large groups like AT&T or Verizon that deal with both landlines and cellular and other issues, they have very different views, sometimes diverging, but sometimes they can achieve great consensus. When we know through one spokesman or one agency what everyone agrees upon, what makes sense for the industry as a whole, and where some of the differences are between the divergent and diverse groups that are represented by an organization like MTIA, it allows us to do our job better.
As an industry, there's far more that unites us than divides us, and at MTIA we can come together and discuss those issues and work together for our shared and common goals to benefit the industry and our customers. And even in areas where there's disagreement, we're able to come together at MTIA to try to resolve those issues and work through those issues to try to better the industry.
Our participation in the MTIA has been beneficial for several decades to our company. We find that, interacting with the various members and personally being able to see the solutions that are developed through discussions in various committee structures and at the annual meetings and other meetings have been very helpful to us. I think being a member of the MTIA gives us some insight as to other people's experiences, and we can learn from those.
The telecommunications industry started with little more than big dreams and miles of wire. Early pioneers rolled up their sleeves and got their hands dirty, and the work didn't stop once our cities were connected. Times changed and challenges changed with them, but the industry was able to innovate to meet customer needs. The Missouri Telecommunications Industry Association thanks all of its members for 100 years of support. MTIA is proud to support the industry in building communities and businesses and bringing all Missourians a little closer together.
For the last century, our association has existed for just one purpose: to make our members more successful in serving their communities, more successful in developing, adopting, and deploying technology, more successful in communicating with the media, and more successful in developing public policies that make sense for their business and customers. One goal, one mission, one voice. As we enter our second century of service, we remain focused on meeting our members' needs to benefit their business goals, their customers, and the citizens of Missouri. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, MTIA. We look forward to 100 more.
Happy anniversary, 100 years. Without the MTIA, we would not be in business. Thank you so much, and we look forward to 100 years more.
Happy anniversary, MTIA. 100 years. Quite a feat.